I'm Bishop of Bristol, which actually covers, in my responsibilities, the former county of Avon. And it's good to be here in the heart of my diocese in the city of Bristol. I'm speaking about loss and hope. Now the lockdown has been lifted a little, and in Bournemouth and Anfield, it's been lifted rather a lot, it seems. Many of us have had the chance to meet with family and friends and to catch up face to face, or at least side by side, and talk about the impact of the last 3 months. I wonder what stories you're telling about your experiences. Those stories are important in what they say and in what they leave out, what they include and what they exclude. I suspect most of us, particularly when we're meeting somebody after a while, tend to make our stories neater and tidier than they really are. Today, I'm speaking to some of the messiness that lies beneath that tidiness and neatness. I come from a faith community which, like most faith communities, has storytelling at its heart. Most obviously Bible stories, and to take just one, a story first told in Egypt or Mesopotamia and retold by the Jewish people when they tried to make sense of bad things happening, of famine and defeat and exile and slavery. Then there were the individual stories of disappointment and grief. And that story is the story of Job, who was a great patriarch, and yes, he was pretty patriarchal, who was tested with the loss of all his wealth and his health. For thousands of years, that story has been used as an example of faithful endurance, but Job was actually an example of nothing of the sort. His patience lasted just a few verses, after which he showed considerable impatience and an urgent desire to be dead. He argued with his friends who tried to comfort him, and he lamented, demanding justice from God and from his friends. And he did so for verse after verse. That lamentation of Job gave those who heard the story permission to lament. And perhaps each of us needs that permission now. I sense a deep weariness in many of those I meet. We are weary because there is so much change. We are weary because we have had to face so much. We are weary because stuff keeps happening and adrenaline has run out. You will have your own lists of events, perhaps including family members who have been sick and shut away from you, elders of your community dying, children of our city unable to go to school, some of them at risk of hunger and neglect and violence, the young people of Bristol with lives on hold, their futures in question, parents struggling to homeschool their children and keep their own jobs, the great digital divide, Black and Asian people so much more vulnerable to COVID-19, those in crowded housing much more likely to catch COVID-19, those who offer social care and healthcare, and we'll hear more of them very soon, those who drive our buses, those who've kept our shops open and collected our rubbish, each at increased risk of COVID-19, each putting themselves at risk. You will still have others on your hearts and in your minds. For me, deep sadness came with the closing of the doors of our 200 churches, just when I wanted them to be kept open as places of comfort and refuge. For me, deep sadness came with the cancellation of weddings. It came when I knew the clergy wouldn't be alongside those who were dying, being present, simply holding their hands to assure them that they were not alone on that last journey. For me, it was not being able to gather communities as they entered corporately the valley of the shadow of death. For me, with all my armour of faith, there was also the profound fear of getting COVID-19 myself. And alongside that, I lamented the increased precariousness of the economy and what that might mean for our city and communities. I grew up on Merseyside with 40% unemployment amongst young people. We became a city of the left behind, and I still lament the way that city and its people were abandoned. I wonder what particularly you lament over. I wonder where you can find a safe space to lament. If you are able, do find someone who will listen. Job had so-called comforters who spoke way too many words. What each of us needs is someone who will listen carefully to our stories, listen to our lament, and keep company with us and the pain that we carry. For Job, having poured out his heart, there could be no further words. He was silent. And then he was presented by God with the ancient equivalent of a video display of life on earth. A vivid, exuberant, surprise-filled demonstration of the world. God showed him the fierce and the foolish, the wise and the wonderful, who all have their place. The creatures who are strong and funny, forgetful and disabled and violent, and they're looked after with gentleness and humour and compassion. He saw a world which is not disordered, but it is untidy and messy. He saw a world in which we are loved, but so is the forgetful ostrich and the hungry lion cub and the soaring eagle. We each have our place, but it's not the only place. The world in which Job lived was strange, and yet it was surprisingly close to the world described by contemporary scientists and ecologists. Above all, it is mysterious and marvelous. We do need to lament. But we also need to move through lament and beyond to marvel and to wonder, because locked down as we have been, we have had space and time to look at a glorious spring, at a smog-free sky, at our streets reclaimed by pedestrians. We have had space and time to get to know our neighbours, to offer support to our communities, and to see those who have been invisible to us, our elders, those who are frail and disabled. And we have begun to include them in our thinking, in our perception. We have had space to look at the world around us, at the people around us, and recognise each other as wonderful, and that we depend on each other. Job lamented because he was determined to find justice for himself. He was also determined to create new relationships with his pesky comforters. We have clapped for carers. And now we do care that those who have kept us safe and fed are valued. We have volunteered in our thousands, even if the systems for volunteering couldn't quite cope. We have found ourselves in new networks and confronted new ideas. We have seen how our world is mysterious and marvelous. And we have just begun to recognize the imperative for economic justice and racial justice, and the need to change our minds and our hearts. I started by talking about the stories we tell. When I arrived 2 years ago, I was puzzled because Bristol seemed to lack the stories to hold us together, stories to hold out to newcomers like me, stories which told of the rich diversity and ingenuity and creativity of our life. And that is, I think, because those stories have been contested, they couldn't be agreed. There is just the chance that we can come out of our silos now and weave a new and greater story. Do we have the courage to seize that moment and bind one Bristol, one city of hope together? The evidence of the last 3 months is that I believe we can. May the rest of this day set us on that path.